Schizophrenia is often misunderstood, but for those who live with it, the reality of what they see and hear can be truly haunting. In today's video, we'll hear first-hand stories from people with schizophrenia, sharing their experiences with the vivid and often terrifying things they encounter. If you appreciate my content, please like and subscribe. I'm creating these videos to help raise funds for my dad's medical treatment, and your support goes a long way. If you'd like to contribute, the GoFundMe link is in the description below. Thank you for being here, and now, let's get into these eye-opening stories. Story 1. 4 voices, 3 male, 1 young female. The female voice howls, screams, and cries when I'm in public places. She whispers to me that people hate me, that they want me dead. She fuels my delusions of persecution, paranoia, and violent urges. Her constant torment is always there, lurking, pulling me deeper into my fears. One of the male voices is completely different. He tells me how much smarter I am than everyone else, feeding my sense of superiority. He strokes my ego, urging me to embrace delusions of grandeur and power, making me feel invincible. The other 2 voices are unpredictable, chaotic. One moment, they're demanding that I kill everyone and everything around me. The next, they lull me into believing I'm perfectly in control, that I don't need medication, that it's poison. They tell me my therapists are plotting against me, trying to erase my mind and turn me into something I'm not. I've been hearing these voices since childhood, but it took years to be correctly diagnosed. Some doctors accused me of faking it for attention, insisting that kids can't be schizophrenic. But it was real. It's always been real. I've been on nearly every antipsychotic medication out there. I've been institutionalized, pulled out of high school, and sent to an alternative school. The medication makes me feel numb, but I know I need it. Without it, the voices take over. I want to live a normal life like everyone else, but I can't. People pull away once they find out I'm ill, and the isolation hurts. I feel jealous of normal people, but at the same time, part of me feels luckier than them, because no matter what happens, I'm never really alone. The voices will always be with me. Story 2. When I was 6, I used to hear a ringing in my ears. Whenever I was alone, if I sat quietly and focused on the sound, making it louder in my mind, the ringing would eventually stop. That's when the voices would start. They weren't saying much, just my name, mockingly, followed by laughter. It was unsettling, but as soon as I found someone to talk to, the voices would disappear, like they never existed. Oddly, no one seemed concerned when I mentioned it. So I just stopped making the ringing louder, and the voices faded away after that. Fast forward to when I was 18, and I was diagnosed with prodromal schizophrenia. Thankfully, I got into an early intervention program before things could escalate, so I was never hospitalized. Over the years, I've had other symptoms, but I've learned to manage them well, especially through breathing meditation, which has been a lifesaver. Now, I'm on a new medication that's been working wonders. I haven't had any symptoms for 3 months, and the side effects are minimal compared to what I've dealt with in the past. I'm socializing more, making new friends, and starting to live a more normal life. But yeah, I'll probably always be a little ardent. I'm okay with that. It's part of who I am. If you know anyone showing the early signs of schizophrenia, please get them into early intervention. It can make all the difference before a full-blown episode takes hold and causes lasting damage, like what happened to my brother. Story 3. My grandma had paranoid schizophrenia. She passed away when I was young, so most of what I know about her comes from stories my mum told me. There were good times when she seemed like herself, but when things got bad, they got really bad. The most haunting part of her illness was the hallucinations she experienced. She believed she could hear angels speaking to her, which might sound comforting at first. But these angels weren't offering guidance or peace. Instead, they convinced her that the devil had taken over the souls of the people around her. They told her it was her duty to cleanse, meaning she had to kill them. Schizophrenic patients, as we know, are usually not dangerous. In fact, we used to live next to a man who had schizophrenia, and all he ever did was ramble on about harmless things. He was always gentle. But in my grandma's case, her hallucinations were dark, and they twisted her perception until her delusions became dangerous. She wasn't the typical case, but it's a stark reminder of how unpredictable and terrifying schizophrenia can be, not just for the person suffering, but for those who love them. Story 4. I experienced a psychotic break from reality after an extreme PTSD episode, which was triggered by too much alcohol, followed by an enormous pot-smoking session. The experience was surreal, like a scene out of the movie Enter the Void, which I watched 2 months after the incident, nearly sending me into another spiral. In this altered state, I felt like I was being judged not by God or the devil, but by a cold, emotionless entity that assessed my life with pure logic. At that moment, I became convinced that I had died when an IED exploded during my deployment in Iraq. My life since then, I believed, was merely a replayer, life flashing before your eyes, extended edition. This, of course, made no sense, but it was the reality I was living in during that break. The judgment did not go well. I felt a punishment more painful than anything I'd ever experienced. I was in sleep paralysis, passed out from the alcohol, and each time I tried to escape, I was hit with a jolt of electric pain. The pain kept evolving, always staying just beyond what I could handle. I became convinced this would be my eternity, endless, ever-changing agony. Luckily, my friends were there. They threw cold water on my face, slapped me around, and kept me awake, although I didn't want to be near them. I could hear their thoughts, and they were judging me too, thinking I had outlived my usefulness. But they didn't let me leave, and that probably saved me. The next day, I walked home, still feeling as though everyone around me was staring at me, thinking, "You're dead, you shouldn't be here." Their gazes followed me even after they passed by, and I heard their voices, repeating over and over that I was dead. I made it to my apartment building and got into the elevator. As the doors were about to close, a girl jumped in. She had ragged, bright red hair, not a natural red, more like Raggedy Ann, and wore an odd mix of clothing: a pink jacket, a blue sequined shirt, a red skirt, black and white striped tights, and gold shoes. Her eyes were bloodshot from crying, and she stared right at me before turning to face the corner of the elevator. She hit a floor number 2 above mine, crouched down, and continued to sob. I was terrified. I thought she was some manifestation of my broken cycle. The missed opportunities, regrets, and failures materialized in front of me. When we reached my floor, she jumped up, ran out of the elevator, and disappeared into my neighbor's apartment, even though the floor she pressed was still lit on the control panel. I didn't leave my room for 5 days. I knew I was still being watched, still being judged. They were waiting for me to mess up, tempting me to do something wrong. I was convinced if I left my room, I'd succumb to those temptations, so I stayed put, trapped. When I finally came out, I went to my neighbors, Indian couple, and asked if they had seen the girl with red hair. They looked at me like I was crazy. They said, "No one has been here. What's wrong with you? Why are you even here?" For 2 weeks, this continued. I couldn't make it stop. Eventually, I broke down and called my mother in tears, telling her they won't stop. She drove for hours to get me and took me to the hospital. Meds, therapy, and time spent with calming, rational doctors eventually brought me back. I recovered, but it was the worst point of my life. Twice in the past year, I've had dissociative episodes triggered by PTSD. Nothing as severe as what I went through before, but the possibility of losing control like that again terrifies me. I still look for the girl with the red hair. Story 5. I hear one voice, but it's not like what most people describe. It's paired with a visual hallucination, so I actually see and hear a teenage girl. She's always with me, keeping me from feeling lonely. In a way, she's my constant companion, but she keeps me from sleeping. I can only fall asleep when I'm absolutely exhausted, because she never really lets me rest. I can have full conversations with her, and it feels like I'm interacting with a real person. Though it's not a physical feeling, it's similar to how you can feel in a dream. But lately, things have taken a darker turn. She's begun saying violent things, words like kill, thrash, and bang. It's unsettling, but I haven't told anyone about this. Not even a doctor, because I'm scared of what people would think. I don't want to be seen as crazy. I know that mentally, I'm far from normal, but I also can't imagine a world without her. I've been bullied and made fun of my entire life, and she's the one who lifts me up. She tells me how great I am when no one else does. But I also can't shake the fear that this might get worse, that it might end up hurting me somehow. It's a complicated thing, both comforting and terrifying. I don't want to lose her, but I'm afraid of where this is heading. It's a love-hate relationship, and I feel trapped between needing her and fearing her at the same time. Story 6. I have PTSD that started with symptoms of schizophrenia. In middle school, I began to notice strange background noises, things that couldn't possibly be happening. I'd hear laughter when I was home alone, someone calling my name, screaming, banging, and even animal sounds. It was surreal because the sounds felt distant, but also like they were right next to me. I talked to my parents about it, but they brushed it off, saying everyone hears things like that, and that I was just overthinking. I tried to ignore it. By the time I was in junior high, the sounds got louder, more frequent, and then turned into voices. There were so many voices, too many to count, all talking at the same time. But there was one voice, a little girl's voice, that stood out. She was scared and would tell me not to trust anyone, to run, to hide, and that everyone around me wanted to hurt me. I think she's part of the reason I developed PTSD. I've blacked out a lot of my life. Sometimes, I don't remember any details until I have a meltdown, and even then, it's all foggy. High school, for me, was one giant, overwhelming mess of sounds, voices, and visual hallucinations. I'd see shadows, people standing behind or next to me, only for them to disappear. At first I thought they were ghosts, but eventually, I realized it was just me seeing things. They got worse when I was stressed, having a meltdown, or feeling angry, just like the voices. I never got medication for any of this. My parents didn't believe me when I told them about the voices, or when I said I was depressed. To them, I was just being a normal teenager. But my boyfriend, who's now my believed me, he's the one who held me together during those years. I was such an angry, messed up person back then. I had fantasies about shooting up my school. I even made blueprints and a detailed plan. The only reason I didn't go through with it was because, deep down, I knew it was wrong. I also had this tiny hope that my life would get better, and in many ways, it did. Things improved after I moved out of my parents' house and made it through high school. The stress lifted, and the voices and hallucinations became less intense. I still hear background noises sometimes, but I drown them out with music, or anything that helps me focus. They're at their worst when I'm doing something that triggers my phobias, like showering. I have this intense fear that I'll get attacked in the shower, or that something will happen to someone I love while I'm in there. My heart races, and I hear strange noises and thumps the entire time. I finally got to see a therapist, and they diagnosed me with PTSD. I have flashbacks, but my service dog and my help me manage, they are the best things that have ever happened to me. When I drink, though, the one voice that's left who sounds like Mai gets louder, and he never says nice things. I have to trust Mai when he tells me that he never said those things. PTSD still messes with my life a lot. I have severe anxiety and depression, and money is tight, so I'm not on any medication right now, even though I want to be. I do my best to cope and pretend I'm normal, but if you talk to me for a while, you'd probably see that I'm anything but. Story 7. I often hear people call my name just a simple hey or hello. It's unsettling, and it happens a lot. I also constantly feel watched. I live alone in an attic above a garage, but I see people outside my windows all the time, watching me. When I get off my bed, I have to leap a few feet, because I always see hands reaching out from underneath it, trying to grab me. When I'm standing or sitting, I'm always afraid there's someone just outside my line of sight, waiting to grab my feet or watching me from the shadows. Crowded places are unbearable. If I have to eat in public, I need the same server every time, or I can't handle it. I look at people and hear the voices in my head telling me what everyone else is thinking, and it's too much. The voices make it impossible to relax. I can't even enjoy a simple meal. I'm also obsessed with deleting texts and Facebook messages. If I don't erase everything, I start to panic. I don't even know why, it just feels like I have to. Over the last 5 months, I've been feeling this overwhelming sense of dread. It's constant, like I have something terrible to say but can't, and it's physically painful, but I have no idea what it is I need to say. Sometimes it feels like my body isn't mine anymore, like it's rented out to the people in my head. At night, I watch myself from a third-person view, pacing back and forth, like I'm not in control of myself. They wake me up sometimes just to make me stare out the windows at the figures outside, watching, waiting. I hear people downstairs in my place, even though no one's there. Sometimes, I send texts I don't remember sending, and other times, I remember writing messages that I never actually sent. The voices in my head keep telling me about things that never happened, over and over again, until I start to believe them. It's terrifying. I don't know what's real anymore. Story 8. Sometimes, I worry that I might have schizophrenia, but without a doctor telling me so, I can't say for sure. It's just a nagging feeling in the back of my mind. However, I'm more certain that my mother might have a form of paranoid schizophrenia, at least to some small degree. She used to take medication for dysthymia, which is similar to depression, but not exactly the same. Interestingly, it's the same medication that's often used to treat schizophrenia, so it makes me wonder. The best way I can describe her is that she's incredibly self-important and condescending 1 minute, acting as if she's holier than thou, but then she'll turn around and bash herself for something trivial. It's like she's constantly swinging between extremes, and I've never felt particularly close to her because of it. She had this habit of bad-mouthing my dad to me, trying to win me over so that when their inevitable divorce happened, I would still keep in touch with her. Her need to be right is exhausting. She argues with anyone she thinks disagrees with her, and even the simplest comment can spiral into a full-blown argument. She turns everything into a fight. Along with that, she's always had severe anxiety for as long as I can remember, and it makes her behavior even more erratic. It's been tough growing up with that dynamic, and I'm still trying to understand how much of it might be her mental health versus just her personality. Either way, it's something I can't ignore. Story 9. I'm not schizophrenic, but my mother is, and growing up with her was a terrifying experience. She would often tell me what the voices in her head said, and it wasn't just random things, it was disturbing, violent stuff. The voices would tell her that they wanted to kidnap and rape me. She'd go into such detail about it that it made me feel deeply uncomfortable, but she was convinced it was real. The voices also told her that someone was going to bomb her house and kill our family, so she never let me out of her sight. I remember one time, she actually busted into the bathroom while I was showering, convinced that I was in danger because of what the voices were telling her. Her paranoia was relentless. She believed that everyone around her was out to get her, and no one could be trusted. It was like she was living in a constant state of fear, and she dragged me into it. The scariest part was when she became convinced that I had a demon inside me. The voices told her that, and she believed it so strongly that in the middle of the night, she would grab me by my hair and bash my head against the wall, trying to get rid of the demon. I still have nightmares about it. I wake up feeling freaked out, and I can never shake that lingering fear. I'm 21 now, and I try to keep my distance from her. I hardly visit her because being around her brings back all those awful memories. But the complicated part is, I still love her. Despite everything, she's my mum, and that love doesn't just go away. It's hard to reconcile those feelings with the trauma, and I'm still working through it. Story 10. I hear random muttering of syllables by what seems to be an old man. Sometimes, I notice myself moving my lips while it happens. I hear random conversations between 2 to 5 people. They speak about entirely random things, and the conversations last for about 30 seconds. I hear random clicking and walking sounds, as if someone is around my computer, reading it. It has caused me to get up and check on the terminal more times than I can count. Then there are the voices that tell me to trust no one. They say everyone hates me, that they fake everything in their interactions with me to get to me and hurt me even more. They tell me I hold absolutely no value to anyone, that I am a menace who has to be extinguished, that I need to die. They tell me everyone else is traitorous, and that I need to kill or be killed. They say that the girl I love is the leader of all this, that she played this joke on me so that I will live the worst existence possible. The voices make me lash out against people, especially my parents. But my parents are part of this too. They can't help me, they are part of the problem. Usually, when these things happen, I freeze. I've taken 4 different drugs so far, and I'm currently on 800 milligrams of Seroquel per day. It's almost the maximum dosage, but the changes it started have halted and begun to revert. I see a psychiatrist once a week, and a psychologist twice a week. I don't trust either of them. I hate talking to them. The psychologist is one of them, and the psychiatrist pretends to understand. I am alone in my room all day, every day, for around 7 months now. I sit in my room in front of the computer with a large headset, playing music or sounds all the time. It muffles the voices sort of. This year was meant to be my last year in high school. I'm the one who finally called for help late last year, but I feel like things were much better when I asked for help. A lot of people seem to think I'm pretending, that I can just get over it and study like everyone else for my finals. I won't be conscripted into the army like everyone else, a rite of passage, of sorts, in my country. I am useless. I don't believe they can help me, or that I can change. I will die here, like this, alone in the darkness, as I've come to call it. Some people suggested I befriend the darkness, but I don't see a way in hell to befriend it. It wants me to die. It wants me to lie and manipulate, and I cannot resist it. So far, I've managed to hurt several people without their knowledge, but I fear that in the end, I will take more drastic measures against them. I am so sick of this. I can't remember what it's like to have peace anymore. Everything is barely a distraction at best. I don't know or remember what real empathy or love are anymore. I want to hurt other people so they will join my misery. I know I shouldn't, but it's very hard to control. Maybe in the end, something will change, but I don't know if I will be there to experience it. Story 11. My best friend's dad is schizophrenic. He's not medicated, and he doesn't talk about what he hears, but he's a strange guy. He's only violent on holidays. He once threatened to kill my friend and her 2 siblings a few Christmases ago. She usually spends holidays with me, just in case. This includes government holidays and such. He talks to himself a lot. He can be talking to you, and then suddenly say something completely out of context, going off on a tangent. it becomes obvious that there's a voice involved in the conversation that you're not hearing. He goes through phases. He's an amazing painter and guitarist. He was talented before the schizophrenia, but his skills were perfected after, during the deep phases he goes into. When I became a big part of their family and started seeing him often, he went into a dental phase because I'm a dental assistant. He talked to me about dental work for hours. The phase became dangerous when we found him passed out on the bathroom floor, covered in blood. He had pulled 6 perfectly healthy teeth because he was convinced he needed dentures. Story 12. I don't have schizophrenia, but I work at a group home with cognitively impaired individuals, and have done so for the past 4.5 years. One of my clients, whom I've worked with for almost 3 years now, is diagnosed with paranoid schizoaffective disorder and suffers badly from auditory hallucinations. Over the years, I've developed a very strong rapport with him, and he's told me a lot about what he hears, how he's feeling, etc. I thought it would be interesting to provide a caregiver's perspective on this matter, since I've worked with him firsthand for a long time. As the name suggests, he is highly paranoid about a lot of things, mostly as a result of the voices he hears in his head. He doesn't have names for them, as they are rarely the same voice each time. This particularly messes with him, because, to him, the voices come from everywhere except his mind unless he's in a particularly lucid state of mind. Then he knows they are delusions, and that he's being paranoid. He often attributes the voices to me, other staff, clients, and most frequently, the TV. Sometimes it's easy to convince him that these things aren't real, and sometimes it's very hard. It's a very delicate subject with him, because if he's very agitated, the idea that he's being paranoid infuriates him. I've learned that the best way to deal with it is to generally downplay what he hears. I refuse to lie to my clients, especially him, and this helps more often than not, because that's my go-to line. He knows me well and understands what I'm like, as well as most of the other staff and clients. So sometimes it's just a matter of saying, "I think you heard it wrong because so-and-so wouldn't say that." He cycles pretty hard, and by that, I mean he has very long periods of good times, where he can manage it well and doesn't react negatively to it. This alternates with very bad times, when he struggles constantly, and it becomes very taxing on him and everyone in the home. We help as best we can, but things generally play out on their own, and he learns to cope better each time. When I first started working with him, he was on a much different medication cycle, but through trial and error, he's come a long way. He's gone from being constantly angry and violent to being able to talk openly about things in a calm manner. He still has outbursts and violent tendencies sometimes, but they're generally much more subdued, and it's easier to talk through them. He has fewer aggressive outbursts now, and I'm no longer as worried generally about them becoming physical reactions. The cycles have also changed a lot, in that the negative ones have become shorter and more infrequent over time. At one point, he went over 6 months without us having to chart any true negative behaviors from him. Regarding the things he hears, the voices generally change, but the delusions have always been pretty repetitive. His biggest one is that he believes someone, usually the government, is trying to experiment on him, frequently focusing on his penis. He also sometimes has thoughts that this experimentation will lead to his death or being put on death row. He's quoted specific times for me before, saying that in 5 or 10 years, exactly this will happen. His other most frequent delusion is that everyone, everywhere, is talking negatively about him. In his head, they say he's ugly or weak, that he has bad hair, that he's an asshole, the list goes on. This makes him extremely insecure, especially because he usually can't identify that this isn't real. To compensate, he spends excessive amounts of time on personal hygiene and fitness, and is constantly seeking reassurance that he looks alright. More recently, he's been thinking that his meds aren't working properly, or are actually causing his excessive anxiety and GI problems. While this has some potential for being somewhat accurate, I've seen firsthand how well these meds have worked for him, at least from a caregiver's standpoint. Plus, he's very lactose intolerant, has a weak stomach in general, and refuses to stop ingesting dairy, despite being repeatedly told that it's what messes with his stomach the most. He also gets delusions of grandeur, and has told me many times that he believes he's more important than anyone in the house and should be treated as such. To make matters worse, this guy's family life is not good. His mother was on drugs when she had him, and his twin brother, and his dad left 15 years ago. His family doesn't really know how he is anymore because he's been in group homes for a long time, so they don't know about his condition, behaviors, or meds. Despite this, many of them, particularly his cousins, brother, and father, with whom he recently re-established contact, for some reason mess with him and tell him incorrect things. A lot of his delusions are exacerbated by them, and the recent delusion about his meds came straight from his father's mouth. This frustrates him to no end, especially because he's always the one to realize they've been messing with him. We know they do, but we can never tell him that since they're family, it's always a very angry and sad day for him when he realizes it's happening. Every day is different, and he also has diagnosed bipolar disorder, so things can change at the drop of a hat. I've forged a pretty good relationship with him so far though, so it's nice being able to help him process through these things when they happen. I find my job very rewarding, and a lot of that is a direct result of working with this client in particular, as well as one of the others in this house. Story 13. I hear a man and a girl. The man tells me things that aren't true, or are out of reach. For instance, he'll tell me to go hit on a girl, even though I know she's out of my league. But sometimes, he says things that just aren't right. For example, just last week, he told me that I could kill a man walking down the street with my knife in my pocket. That I can play God, and that I am God, and everything that exists is me. He scares me. I only hear him when I'm alone and depressed though. The girl's voice is an odd story. I had an ex move away to Florida about 6 months ago, without saying a word to me. She just up and left. But the girl's voice I hear, I can recognize as my ex's, Kelly. She's the nice one, and I hear her a lot. She tells me that I shouldn't fear being alone, and I shouldn't fear death. I shouldn't be afraid of what lies ahead, but embrace it instead. She's also my heightened common sense, if you will. Like if I'm cooking, I don't know, a cake, she'll tell me exactly what to put in the bowl, what the consistency should be, and how long it will take. She's always right. I haven't read cooking directions since I started hearing her. She tells me I'm a nice, loving, kind-hearted, and generous man, and that I shouldn't listen to the angry-tempered man in my head. Nobody knows that I hear these voices, not even my mum, who I'm super close to. I might hear these voices, but I see it as a good thing. I have a different understanding of the world, as well as several viewpoints on an issue when I have one. The only real problem is that, when I'm alone, I talk to the girl, the one who sounds like Kelly, and we have nice conversations, just like me and the real Kelly did. I am so in love with this girl, even after 6 months, that hearing this voice even hurts sometimes. We talk daily, the voice and I through my thoughts when I'm around people, and aloud when I'm alone. She tells me every night before I fall asleep, "Sweet dreams, my darling. When you wake tomorrow, I will be here when you wake. Sleep tight. I love you. Don't let the bedbugs bite." Then I smell a perfume that smells like strawberries, and I feel a faint kiss on my cheek. This routine kills me inside, because I know who the voice is. I know exactly who it is, and it scares me. I cry every night when I feel that faint kiss on my cheek, because that's what Kelly would do. And she's gone forever. I'm sad that I hear her tell me she loves me every night, because I know she's not real, but at the same time, I'm glad I'm not alone. All of my friends left because I'm either an atheist, or I don't have money to give them to get messed up every night. I know Kelly is gone, and I know the voice is fake. But at least I have someone to talk to who understands me, and someone to tell me they love me every night of my life. That's all I could ask for. I wish this voice were a real person, here with me, instead of the voice of a person I'm madly in love with and will never see again. I'm sorry if I spelled anything wrong. I'm bawling at the moment, so it's a little hard to type, but I feel like typing this out makes me feel better and makes it a little easier to cope with. Story 14. My adopted aunt is schizophrenic. She can be pretty violent if she is not on her medications. She once smothered my sister with a pillow when my sister was a toddler. Apparently, my adopted aunt didn't know how to deal with a crying baby. She also hit my 92-year-old grandfather with an iron skillet over the head. Long story short, she has been ousted from the family due to her violent actions, but we do maintain a relationship with her because she is, after all, family. I have heard her say that aliens are drilling into my head with a hot wire. She would look at me with the most serious face and tell me that it's really sad because I know it's not her fault. Some portions of my religious family think she is possessed by demons, which is even more sad because they do not truly understand her condition. Story 15. Officially, I have only been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Mixed, but I have mentioned auditory hallucinations to my doctor on several occasions now. She seems to keep disregarding it or focusing more on the manic-depressive symptoms I've described. Anyway, most of what I hear occurs at night, especially if my roommates have already gone to bed and I'm the only one left awake. I hear breathing and whispering, but very rarely do I hear anything immediately identifiable. It's really unnerving to know I am hearing something, but not know what's being said. I've gotten frustrated and demanded the voices speak up before, but that only silenced them. Sometimes, I see my curtains moving in and out against the window, as if the curtains are breathing. Even if I don't have a fan or the AC on, that's when the breathing is the loudest. Otherwise, I hear random sounds throughout the day. I try to keep some sort of music going at all times when I'm at home, or play a game, anything to generate noise. If I'm in a public space, like a grocery store or parking lot, sometimes I'll hear someone shout my name from afar. I'll look around and find nobody I recognize, or no one who called out to me. I think the most disturbing times for me, though, are the silences. I get so used to hearing things, noises, voices, or breathing throughout the day and night. When everything goes deathly quiet and all I can hear is the sound of nothing, that's what really gives me the fear. That is all for today. If you have enjoyed this video, do like and subscribe and let me know below of your thoughts. If you want to help in my dad's fundraiser, I would truly appreciate it. Hope you have an absolutely amazing day. You can also check my other videos on screen.